Welcome to God Winging It. God Winging It, not me winging it. My name is Roger Michael Klang. I am an analytic in big politics and military matters. I mainly use SR Ecot as a source. An elite soldier is accused of betting on Maduro's arrest. The elite soldier, who himself was involved in bringing the Venezuelan president from Caracas to the United States in early January, is alleged to have bet money on 13 occasions, AP reports. He is said to have made a profit of $400,000. Now, the elite soldier is arrested and accused of, among other things, illegal use of secret state information. Okay, I recall that in and around the US administration, some individuals made huge illegal profits on oil on the stock market in conjunction with negotiations for a truce in the Iran US war. Too big to fail, someone said about certain individuals. The White House corruption stinks all the way to Europe. If you are not going to prosecute White House staff members, then don't prosecute this elite soldier. But prosecute them all. FBI Chief Kash Patel says, no one is above the law. Donald Trump and the US administration accepted, of course. King Charles was in the US and spoke in front of the Congress. He said that there is a priceless, eternal, irreplaceable, unbreakable bond of kinship and identity and friendship between the US and UK, referring to Donald Trump. Lots of superlatives. That's right, Charles. Keep to the Epsteins. Iran questions the motive to the US self proclaimed indefinite ceasefire between the US and Iran announced by the US administration. No wonder. A bigger snake than Donald John Trump the world has yet to see, if it is even possible. In order for Iran to want to negotiate with the US, they want the US blockade of Iranian ports to be lifted and for the US president to tone down his threats. At the same time, the United States has strengthened its military presence in the Middle East. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has said that Iran has a chance to negotiate, quote, if they abandon nuclear weapons, end quote. Iran, of course, denies that it has nuclear weapons. So, back to the drawing board, huh? It was never about nuclear weapons. Only very gullible people and morons believe that. The Iranians are playing their cards better than the Americans. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is traveling to Pakistan for talks on the war between Iran, the United States, and Israel, according to Iranian state media. No Americans would be present. But then they changed their mind again and sent Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to the talks in Pakistan. No, wait, press stop. US President Donald Trump cancels trip to Pakistan for Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Araghchi said that the goal is to discuss developments in the region. precisely what the Americans don't want. The US administration would much prefer if the Iranians' goal was to negotiate their own existence as a state and for them to express that this is their goal. Remember, it's a zero-sum game, a child's play. My dad could beat your dad up. Big politics has, just like for Sandbox Boys, got nothing at all to do with reality. Any longer, that is. Meanwhile, the shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's crude oil usually passes, is at a standstill. But Trump is saying, contrary to what he said a couple of days ago, that he has got all the time in the world. All the time in the world. It sounds like there is coming more hostilities. It sounds like the US is about to fill up their stocks of missiles on their naval ships. In the meantime, Israel will strike Hezbollah in Lebanon with full force, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israeli media reported. And indeed, Israel has intensified its attacks in southern Lebanon, despite the current ceasefire. Trump wants to win the peace, but Benjamin Netanyahu certainly doesn't want peace. The United States and the Philippines have begun what is being described as their largest joint military exercise to date. The exercise brings together more than 17,000 soldiers from 7 countries, among them Japan, and is seen as a mark of the United States' continued military involvement in the Asia-Pacific region despite the war in the Middle East. The United States has previously promised to deploy more advanced missile weapons systems in the Philippines, which could happen in connection with the exercise. In the meantime, African countries didn't let Taiwan's president fly through their airspace. Washington calls it a violation of international aviation rules and urges Beijing to end its pressure on Taiwan. Beijing denies the allegations, saying the incident only shows how countries agree with China's view that Taiwan belongs to China. Nothing happens in a vacuum. And Indonesia's finance minister has floated the idea of imposing tariffs on ships passing through the Strait of Malacca, inspired by Iran's actions on the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Malacca carries even more oil than the Strait of Hormuz, and about a quarter of the world's seaborne trade. Thank you, Donald. Singapore, which shares the strait with Malaysia and Indonesia, strongly rejects the idea of tariffs, stressing that the principle of freedom of passage is a fundamental part of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. SR echoed from November 2025, quote, "The United States is boycotting the G20 summit in South Africa, which will be held later in November," President Donald Trump said on social media. Trump says that white South Africans are being killed and their land is being illegally confiscated. He therefore does not want the United States to participate in the meeting, claims that have long been dismissed by the South African government as false. Trump also said that he looks forward to hosting the G20 summit next year, which will be held at his own golf resort in Miami. End quote. And now, fast forward to SR Equid from April 2026. US invites Vladimir Putin to G20 summit in Miami. Published April 24. Quote, the US is hosting the G20 this year, and according to President Donald Trump, it would be, as he calls it, a great help if Putin attended the meeting. End quote. Russia and North Korea have agreed to extend their military cooperation, the Russian defense minister said. The announcement came after Defense Minister Andrei Belousov visited Pyongyang and met with Kim Jong-un. Putin about the US-Iran war. Moscow will do everything to secure peace. And he should talk about peace. I'm being ironic. Ukraine and Israel risk a diplomatic conflict after Ukraine claims that a ship with stolen Ukrainian grain was unloaded in Israel. Ukrainian President Zelensky says that Kyiv is preparing sanctions against those involved. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar writes on X that Ukraine has not presented sufficient evidence for its allegations, and that Ukraine has not requested legal cooperation from Israel before the issue was raised in public. But he didn't deny that it happened. Zelensky is going to talk with the EU about sanctions. That's my 2 cents. Roger and out.